Well, hello, everybody out there in internet land. Welcome to everyone watching on YouTube and Facebook. And if you happen to be listening to this after the fact, welcome from whatever your favorite podcast platform happens to be. And we're glad you're here. Today's guest, this is a good follow on from last week's show, actually. But we're talking with Jessie Kwak, who's an author, a business book ghostwriter, and the mastermind behind something we're going to be discussing today, which is the Author Alchemy Summit coming up in Portland, Oregon. So welcome to the show, Jessie.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, we always enjoy. I mean, I love talking to people who organize conferences because you guys have like a special, like hardened soul. Because being an author is tough enough, but going through the whole process of putting together a conference and making it go off without a hitch is it's an admirable quality, and I don't want it. I don't want to do it. So
yeah, it's a complete different set of skills than I'm used to. So
yeah,
it's been a good learning experience. This is going to be the first year for the summit.
This is your first year. Okay. Yeah. That explains why you're still like, you still have that look of freshness about you. Like, you're not dragging, you're not holding anybody at gunpoint or anything yet.
Yeah, you'll see what I look like in February. We'll find out.
Yes. Yeah. It's always after the conference. So you're going to fall in one of two camps. You're either going to be like, that was hard, but I can't wait for next year. We're already planning next year. Or that was impossible and I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
Those are the two people I come across most. So let's open up, but let's talk about your writing. What sort of books do you actually write?
Yeah, so I write fiction and nonfiction, and then ghostwrite business books. So my fiction is science fiction, kind of space shenanigans, lots of adventure, shoot 'em up sort of stuff. And then my nonfiction, I write books about kind of creativity and productivity in the writing process that are kind of aimed at writers and artists and people who are trying to make more time for their art, but have more of like that creative brain as opposed to like the business, the kind of business productivity books that are out there.
Yeah.
And then, I also ghostwrite business books, which are mostly for kind of thought leaders and coaches and consultants and that sort of thing. So it's a wide range of writing.
Yeah, you cover the whole spread. Ghostwriting is one of those things. I've done some ghostwriting in my career. It's kind of fascinating in a way because you're still engaging that part of you, the author part of you, but there's something about it because you know that you're speaking someone else's words.
Yeah.
What's been your experience with that?
I love it. And I think it's really interesting to work with one of my clients and help them kind of shape their ideas and come up with, I guess I've worked with everyone from like, somebody's come to me with an outline of exactly what they want to say and what's going to be in every chapter. And then, the current project I'm working on right now is a guy with just a really cool story and philosophy that I'm helping him shape that from the very beginning of like, okay, here's what the book will look like.
Yeah.
And it's just a really fun collaborative process. I love interviewing. I love teasing out people's stories. So it's enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that your secret sauce as you interview? And then everyone has kind of a different method when it comes to this stuff. Like I interview too. I do what we're doing here. Like I just about 10 or 20 times over the course of a couple of months, I sit down and, so tell me your story, we agree to like an outline or something and then we run. But yeah, that's the fun part of the process. So, but this is, and all this stuff is fascinating. I'm sure we could talk about this and we can some more, but the topic of today is one that I think a lot of our authors are very interested in because they hear about this kind of thing all the time, but the art of building author community. Let's start with that. Like what is it when you say author community, what do you mean specifically?
I mean, kind of your colleagues who will be there to help promote your books, to be there, your shoulder to cry on when your books aren't doing well or when the writing process is going poorly.
Right.
everyone just kind of who is in your network.
Yeah.
So I've been a freelance writer for over 10 years now, and I learned very, very quickly that networking was the best way to build my business. You know, it all came from referrals, and it came from people I met at networking events and things like that. And as I transitioned more of my business to writing fiction, I quickly realized the same thing. Like, you know, newsletter swaps and people boosting you on social media, like that is what's going to help you sell books.
Yeah.
But then as you're writing the books and you need to be like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. Like, you need those people that you can have that group text of like, oh my gosh, my character's going off the rails, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, they're the people that sustain you when things aren't going well and can celebrate when things are going well. And yeah, it's just been a really vital part of my journey for sure.
Yeah, I imagine, because being this whole writer business is such a lonely endeavor sometimes, and I did this whole thing about writing with the door open recently, and people really resonated with that. And I thought I was pitching something everyone was going to resist, but that idea of right where life is happening, so having people as part of a community you can turn to, that seems invaluable to me. Like, so where do you start with building that?
I think let's see. Online definitely helps. I mean, I'm already, as I'm kind of looking at the comments on the side, people are having little conversations. Like, that's where I think a lot of my very first writing community folks came from, was online groups that I was part of. Then I started, excuse me, started doing more, trying to go to conferences and local events and meeting people that way. And we moved to Portland, Oregon about, I guess, 8 years ago. And the Portland writing community has been incredibly welcoming. The first people I met was because, like you said, kind of writing in public places. I was writing in a coffee shop and somebody walked behind me and was like, "Hey, you're using Scrivener. Are you a writer? Are you writing fiction?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Oh, well, I do this regular write-in at a local library every, first Saturday of every month. You should come." And so I went and like met some amazing people, one of whom I had dinner with last night. I was like, "Man, I've known you for 7 years purely because this guy walked behind me and was like, 'Hey, you're using Scrivener.'"
Yeah, it's amazing how often that happens. I know a story from one of our people, good friend of mine, Nick Thacker here. That's how he met Kevin Eikenberry. Was in a coffee shop in Colorado Springs and just saw that he was using Scrivener. It's like Scrivener is a great icebreaker for authors.
Totally.
Like, because you recognize it. I mean, you instantly know, oh, that's Scrivener. I know that. And then that gives you a total opening to interrupt their writing and and talk to them for a bit. So what you go ahead.
Oh,
Go
there's
ahead.
nothing that writers want more than to be interrupted so we don't have to write, so we can talk to somebody
It is
about writing.
true. Yeah, it is true. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this. We wouldn't be out writing in public if we weren't hoping that somebody would interrupt us.
Yeah.
So for at least a bit. So
Save me.
you mentioned online communities. What sort of groups and communities have you been a part of?
Early on, I joined a group, I think it was called Critters.
Oh wow.
I don't even know if they're still around, but it was kind of an online critique group where you could submit things and then you could, critique other people's things and kind of get to know
Okay.
people that way.
Yeah.
And
I get
then
it now.
some Facebook
Critters. I get
groups.
it. Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah. Facebook groups. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
those were the first two places that I really started meeting people, and Twitter, rest in peace.
Whatever's happening with Twitter. I mean, in comics, in old comics, if someone died, their eyes were replaced with X's. Just going to point that out there. So Facebook groups. Are there any Facebook groups that you're actively a part of now that you would recommend to people?
I actually am not really on Facebook a lot these days.
Yeah.
I've kind of moved more towards Instagram, but I guess you don't have the same group vibe there, but
Yeah.
following different hashtags or following people that other writers that are suggested to me, and then kind of starting to creep into their comments and meeting people that way.
Yeah. And do you have like a little clutch of authors? I mean, you basically said that you did, but I mean, how do you all interact? Are you meeting in person, or do you have like a Discord server? I mean, how do you keep in touch with all these people?
Yeah, so I about maybe 5 years ago inherited a in-person meetup group from somebody else who'd been running it in Portland.
Okay.
And so we meet up basically in my backyard now about once a month. And because it'd been going on for a couple of years, and then when COVID hit, I was like, well, we're not meeting up at my house this month, but here's Slack. Can we do a Slack group? And
Yeah.
so that has been a really great way to keep in touch with the kind of local writers.
Mhm.
And then, people are like, hey, can I invite this friend? And so the Slack group has been growing and growing of this local Portland writers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm also in a couple other different Slacks and Discords that I've been invited in by other people. And
Yeah.
that's been a great way to kind of keep in touch.
How active are you in those?
It depends. Some of them I have Slack open almost every day.
Yeah.
So the Discord I barely remember to check, but
Yeah.
Slack
Yeah.
I'm almost always there.
Yeah. Slack that's how all us D2D folk communicate. That's pretty much our default mode of communication. So that's always going. But
Mhm.
then do you ever feel like though, because I sometimes feel overwhelmed by all of it. I get invited to like 100 different groups, and everyone's got a different Slack channel or different Discord or a different, something else entirely. And I want to be a part of all of it, but how do you pick and choose what you should be a part of?
Yeah, you really can't be a part of all of the different groups, and I think
Yeah.
that's part of my stepping away from Facebook, just saying,
Yeah.
okay, this is a thing, this is too overwhelming for me. I will join your Slack group, but I will not join your Facebook group. Sorry, like I just kind
Right.
of made that platform differentiation for myself, um, and yeah, as I've gotten kind of more invites from people around even the Slack groups, I'm like, okay, well, I will maybe join, but I'm not going to be as active in this one because it's not meeting my, whatever goals I'm looking for right now. And so I guess for me personally, I'm looking for networking, for like different business opportunities. And
Mhm.
so specifically, I want to be in groups with people who write in the same genre with me, as opposed to somebody who might not have the same readership and be able to do different, newsletter swaps and things like that.
Yeah.
And the same, kind of if I'm going to be in more of a mastermind, like let's talk business group, it needs to be with people who are in a
Yeah.
similar line of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we go on, I want to remind everybody that if you want your questions answered, the only way we're going to be able to do that is if you ask them in the comments. So make sure you drop a question there, and do me a favor and hit the like button and possibly a subscribe button if you see one, because that helps us out. But let us know you're liking the content by clicking like. I see a couple of people have done that already, so thank you for that. So when it comes to the groups, and you apparently are a member of several, my condolences. But do you do you do you use these, like, do you silo each one? Like, okay, this is my group that's all about ghostwriting or is all about business, or whatever, and this is my fiction group, and then this is something else entirely, or does it all end up kind of meshing together?
I think there's a fair amount of overlap. Like I have, one kind of smaller group. There's I think 4, 5 of us in this Slack that
Yeah.
it's all business. And so we write in similar genres, but not all of us are in a similar enough that it would be, networking for promotion stuff. But it's really a business mastermind. So I'll go in there and I'll be like, hey, I've got a problem with um, my Facebook ads, or I'm frustrated with this thing, or has anyone tried using ConvertKit instead of MailerLite? And so I've got one group that's smaller like that, and then a bigger group that also kind of has some of that vibe to it. And
Yeah.
then I have like another group that is really more just complaining about writing together. It's the group that you can just go in and be like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, I'm having such a rough day with the plot, or I can't figure this out, or I'm unmotivated. Somebody send me cat photos until I get motivated again. So it's really the more like social group. So yeah, they are a little siloed, or every group has kind of a different flavor.
Yeah. Do you ever use these, do groups strictly for like research? I mean, are there groups that have people in them that are not authors that you go to for some of the research you have to do?
I haven't really done that. I think for research, I tend to like snoop on the internet and see what people have said. And then if I need to dive deeper, kind of get in touch with, like, if I saw somebody on Reddit that had an answer to a question I'd been trying to figure out about, like, a character or a bit of science. Not that, to be fair, my books are pretty science light. So if I can't, if I have to do too much explaining, I'll generally just cut it and throw in another gunfight. But, I'll kind of do the internet research and then reach out to people if I have more questions.
I mean, that seems like a solid way to handle that sort of thing. I do a little research and then I just make up the stuff that I need it to be. So, just bonus for being a fiction author. So we're going to talk, we're coming up, we're going to talk about the Author Alchemy Summit. But we do have a couple of questions we can kind of toss around real quick. Karen Ladybug Richardson on Facebook asks, what do people like to read more about, nonfiction or fiction books?
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Like I tend to read more fiction. My dad only reads nonfiction. I think he's read a couple of my books because I wrote them, but
because you, exactly.
But I don't know. I feel like it's 50-50 when I talk to people. And I do actually a lot of street fairs as well. And so people will come up to our booth, and there's, a few of us sharing a table, and it's really 50-50 of people that are like, oh yeah, I love fiction. Tell me more about your books. Or, oh, I only read nonfiction. Who here writes nonfiction? And most of us are fiction authors. But
that's interesting. It does depend on where you are. The context matters, but what I've noticed is when I'm at author conferences, I think most authors primarily read nonfiction. Lots of them read plenty of fiction. Don't get me wrong, but it seems like the authors I meet who are, I guess, let me put it a different way. The authors who are hitting like a certain level in the business seem to all read nonfiction primarily. And I do think that we should all be reading both because, it's language and you learn how to play with that language. That's a good way to go. Actually, I don't think I ever actually showed Karen's question, but there's Karen. Hi, Karen. Sorry about that. And this question from, I'm not even going to try this. Mr. Maurice, we're going to say, question, I would like to join a writing community, but can't find one. How can I find one? I write fiction only, main genre, erotic comedy. I have also written non-erotica. You got any tips for finding a community?
Yeah, I would say social media can be a really great place to start meeting people and forming that community around yourself, or if you have met somebody who's like, oh, I'm also on this Slack or this Discord with other people who write similar stuff. So I would start off in, the Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, finding those people and connecting with them and making those kind of individual connections, and then seeing where they're hanging out in a group setting, because it seems like it used to be easier to find like an online group that was dedicated to things, but now because so much of us have moved to like Slack and Discord, it's not as public. So although Facebook, there's still a lot of Facebook groups dedicated to certain genres, so that might be a really good place to start too.
Yeah, and there's some really the thing about the Facebook groups though is they get massive, and so it gets to a point where you're just, it's just all noise. It's hard to kind of pick out an actual community because lots of people do, but I mean, man, some of these communities, several thousand people. How am I supposed to keep up with all that? But
it really is about like making those individual connections within that bigger community. But it's hard to do online. I mean, it's hard to do in real life too. But I think both ways, it's just a practice of reaching out, saying hello, those kind of the things that you do to make friends.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what there needs to be? There's meetup.org,
Yeah.
I think, which is, if you're not familiar with it, listeners and viewers, it's a site that allows you to find groups based on your interests, and you can meet with those people, and they may actually have something that's aimed towards virtual meetups. I'm not sure, but there needs to be something like that. That's just like, is a list of Slack groups and Discord groups of writers, and you can get invited by clicking here. There needs to be something like that. Perhaps that's
Yeah.
a business idea we can.
Oh, totally.
So let's talk a little bit, because this is coming up. I don't know the dates. You can tell us when, but the Author Alchemy Summit coming up in Portland. When is that going to happen?
Yeah, so that'll be February 22nd through 25th of next year.
Okay. 2024 for those listening. So if you get real excited and it's like, 2035, it may not be at that time, but hopefully it will, good 10 or 15 years run. That's a good run for a conference. So what's the sort of gist behind this particular summit? What's your goal?
Yeah, so it's kind of a twofold goal. It's going to be a fairly small conference. I think the venue is capped at about 150 people. So the idea is, getting a smallish amount of people in the room with a bunch of experts, so that you're getting more one-on-one time with experts. You're getting, you won't be at the end of a 20-person line for a Q&A. Like, you'll actually be having lunch with one of the experts, that sort of thing. But also building that community, right? So, you're not wandering into a hall every morning being like, I don't recognize anyone. You'll be like, I sat next to that person yesterday, and this person, and that sort of thing. So kind of to that end, like, we're catering breakfast and lunch, so people don't have to wander off and figure out what to eat and where to go. And we're going to be hosting different kind of mixers and networking events, have a karaoke night, that sort of thing. So it's really around that building community on the one hand. And then on the other hand, I really wanted to focus it down on, there's so many aspects of the writing business. And so I really wanted to keep it focused on kind of the business side of writing, but specifically on connecting with readers, which I guess is another kind of part of the community question. So all the presentations are focused around the question of, how do we connect with readers?
Okay. I mean, that arguably that's the most important thing when it comes to, if you're going to be successful in this business, you need readers.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So you got some big names coming. You said some experts, right?
Yeah. So we've got Tammy Labreck from Newsletter Ninja. She's going to be there. Charlie Gilkey, who runs Productive Flourishing, he'll be there as well. Kevin J. Anderson, Susan DeFreitas. She is a book coach who used to live here in Portland and is now in Santa Fe. And Claire Taylor will also be there.
Okay.
Also Joe Beal and Ellie Blue, who run Microcosm Publishing here in Portland. They're kind of a really cool small press that not a lot of people have heard of, but they published my nonfiction books, and they started publishing zines like 25 or 30 years ago now, I think. And now are like one of the fastest growing small presses in the US, maybe in the world. I'm not sure.
Wow.
But
might as well be the world.
Yeah.
If you're the biggest in the US, then you're the biggest in the world.
But they're just like super business smart and super marketing smart, and have a very unique model for a more traditional press. So they're going to be there as well. I've got Joanne McCall, who's a publicist, a book publicist. She'll be there as well. She's got this great book called Media Darling, all about like getting out in front of the cameras and how to build up your kind of maybe speaking career or getting on podcasts and that sort of thing. Like, she's got a lot of great stuff to say about that.
That's fantastic. Good. All right. That sounds like quite a lineup. A lot of familiar names in that. People people who watch this show or listen to this show will recognize some of those, especially Kevin J. Anderson, who has been really big. I've known him for a few years now, and he's actually sort of headlined at a lot of little conferences that we've done, and he's surprisingly very indie for somebody so traditionally published, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So, is that is this conference, is there like an orientation there, like more indie and more traditional, or is it just sort of a free-for-all?
It'll definitely be more indie vibe. But I am trying to make it so it's not, how am I phrasing this? I don't want to exclude people who are traditionally published. I want it to be something that has tools that we can all use.
Yeah.
But that said, indie authors there's a lot more tools that are available to us in terms of connecting directly with our readers.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're at a certain stage in your traditional career, this might not be a great fit. Like if you're querying agents right now and you don't have any books out, like learning about the marketing side of things is maybe not going to, it might be putting cart before the horse a little bit. So, I mean, I think there will be things that are valuable for everybody at every stage, but I am aware, like if you're on the agent hunt or, on a really solid traditional path and you're hoping your publishing company is going to do most of the marketing for you, then you might not get as much out of this conference as you would going to a more traditional conference.
I don't know. I think it could actually be very beneficial, because they're going to be sadly disappointed if they think that the publisher is going to do all the marketing.
Yes,
but
true.
There's an argument to be made that getting yourself noticed by an agent or publisher, there's a bit of marketing that can happen in that as well. I think it's a tool every author needs, really. But that's a whole other podcast, and we can do that in a future podcast. That's great. I mean, that's the thing. I really think, I feel very strongly at this point that there's less of a line between self-publishing and traditional publishing, and I think you're slowly starting to see the trad pub world recognize that and start making some changes. So maybe your summit will be the pivot point upon which the entire industry shifts. Well, we can only hope.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. And it's, online, I'm mostly in indie communities because that's that's the business I'm running. But in person, I would say like half my friends here in Portland who are authors are kind of half and half, and a lot more, I guess, leaning towards trad at first. But now I'm having so many conversations with friends that are like, so tell me more about how are you doing the book thing? Like, how are you getting the books on the internet and into people's hands? Like, I want to know how to do that, because I've been querying agents for 45 years and I'm not sure.
That's interesting. That's interesting that you're starting. I mean, I'm starting to hear that too. I was at a conference this past weekend, and it still had agent tracks and pitch sessions and things. And I ended up consulting with somebody she just wanted to know, like, I'm like, I'm not an agent. I've had agents, but I don't currently have an agent. So I'm not the best to give you advice on pitching, but if it were me, I would do this. And turns out she got a deal. So I guess my advice worked.
Awesome.
Let that be a lesson, everybody. Come ask me for advice, I guess. So, all right. Well, it sounds great. And February is a good time to have conferences, in my opinion. It's almost the start of the year, but you're not embroiled in the New Year's stuff, and the holiday stuff is past, and everybody's ready for a break from having breaks.
Exactly. Yeah, you're still in that like forward momentum of your, it's the first of the year. I've got all these goals.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a good time for a conference. So, well, what's the end game goal here, though? Are you trying to build something that you think will grow over the next few years, or is this you're more aiming for like a one-off?
Yeah, I would love to have this be a yearly event. Like you were saying at the beginning, we'll see at the end of February if I fall into the camp of, oh my gosh, never again, or that was hard, but I want to keep doing it.
I suspect you will be in the second group because you have that energy that you're already gung ho. I suspect that there'll be at
Yeah.
least one more of these for you. It's only
Yeah.
after like the third one that you're like, no, I give up on life. I'm done.
Totally. Well, and yeah, like the monthly meetup that I do, in person, like I love that energy, and I like that's as simple as like sending an email and then making sure I have some beers and sodas like
Yeah.
by the time people start showing up. So this is definitely a much larger organization effort, but I'm loving like the excitement that the early attendees are having, and like, yeah, this is going to be fun, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it sounds fun. Couple of questions. Let's pop these up. This one's from Alyssa. Have you ever started your own author community from ground zero, or any advice on where to start?
Yeah, I would. I mean, this is kind of, I think, piggybacking off of the advice of how to connect with people originally. Like, if you're finding people online to start kind of building that community around, or whether you're bothering people using Scrivener in a coffee shop, I guess, is how you meet people in real life.
That's how I'm building all my author communities going forward.
But I would say think of it more like building a friend group
Mm,
than like starting a thing at first. And start to figure out, like, do I like this person? Do we seem compatible? Do we write similar things? Would we, how would we interact? And just start gathering those people, and maybe keeping a list yourself, and then reaching out at some point and being like, hey, I'm starting a mastermind of people who are, all writing X genre, or people who are living in this geographic location, or whatever it is. And I mean, I've gotten those emails from people before, and it's always like, oh, how cool. Thanks for
mm,
organizing this. I
yeah.
think the thing that a lot of us authors forget is that most of us are introverts, right? And
Mhm.
the people who are willing to go out and like take the first step to make those connections, we all appreciate that so much. If somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I'm starting a group, will you be in it? Like, you're generally not bothering them. You probably just made their day. So I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Do you let me figure out. Okay. One of the things that I am interested in for myself is I want a group of writers, but I don't necessarily want us to talk about writing all the time. Like, I want a group of writers who like, let's go camping, or let's go get coffee, or let's,
Mhm.
hang out and chat about, the latest episode of show X. Is that anything like what you've experienced, or is it always like, how focused does everybody have to be on writing and to be a part of these communities?
Oh, I think it's so important to have like the other hobbies as well. Like,
Yeah.
in the local Slack group, we broke out a bunch of different channels, like writers who run, writers who cook, things like that. And so, I mean, there's a bunch of us who I was like, hey, you guys all are into running, and I'm starting to get into it. So I'm going to put you all into this side channel because I want to pick your brains. And now I'm going like, you know, to races with a bunch of other writers, and we're not talking about writing, we're talking about running and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I think you can very well just be like, hey, writers who camp, let's get
Yeah.
together.
There you go. I tried to
Yeah.
start one before we got on the road full time for a while. That was like just coffee, writers having coffee.
Hmm.
Actually, I think I played on the comedians in cars getting
Oh, yeah, yeah.
coffee. I think I played on that, like writers in coffee shops just drinking coffee. And it didn't. I think people were kind of excited about the idea of there being a writers group, but they were very hung up on, like, they brought their manuscript and they want to read it and they want to get critiques, and that wasn't what I was going for. But
Yeah.
maybe if I had been more clear.
I think being clear is important. Like the
Yeah,
in-person meetup that I do, when I invite new people, they're like, should I bring something to read? Do I need to submit something? It's like, no, no, no. We are just having a beer in my backyard and talking about absolutely anything.
Yeah.
We often talk about writing because it's a group of writers, so it
Because that's what
happens.
you got in
You
common,
can't
right?
stop us from talking about writing, but
Yeah. But that's when all those the best conversations happen. And that's one of the things I like about going to actual writing conferences, because you're there for a common theme, but
Mhm.
and you are going to have those conversations, but not every conversation is about, well, what do you think? What should I do about my cover? Or what, should I hire a developmental editor? You don't, it's not all about that. It's things like, well, I took this trip to Mexico and I went to to this landmark or whatever. And then you grow from that. Like, that's the conversations you want to have, because
Mhm.
that's where you grow.
Yeah.
So yeah. Jim had actually posted a very similar question to Alyssa, but let me pop that up anyway. It says, hi Jesse, how would you go about building community from scratch if you're a new author? Is there a step-by-step approach? Similar to what Alyssa asked, but what I want to know is, have you written down anywhere a step-by-step guide for building an author community?
I
See how I
have
turned
not.
that around? I made that a
Yeah.
thing.
I should. I should write up an
You
article that
should.
yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely should. So maybe that's a topic you can cover at the conference, like you
Yeah.
do a keynote. Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Jim, for popping in. So yeah, I'm this is an ongoing thing, because I go back and forth, because there's a part of me that really likes connecting with authors. I really do. I mean, I have met hundreds of thousands of authors at this point, and and some of them have met me. But it's always there's that line. I can see it when I go to certain conferences. It's like everyone there is hyper focused on, they just want to know how to sell more books. And then there's this line, and then this another group that's like, I want to sell more books, but I also want to get drunk. And then there's the line that's sort of like I don't know how to describe them. They're the ones who make tons and tons of money, and they know everything about the business, and they also just want to kind of hang out and party a little, but they're willing to impart. Like, that's when you want to do BarCon with these
Yeah.
folks. Like, they're willing to impart they just drop these casual gems that can redefine your whole career, while also ordering another round of Jägermeister or something. So there's a question probably in there somewhere, but what kind of conference do you think, where in that spectrum do you hope that this summit's going to be?
I would say the middle part of the spectrum. So not
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm seeing it as an extension of the backyard social, but
Yeah.
with a bunch of experts that we've flown in to casually drop that knowledge while they order another round of, hopefully not Jägermeister.
I don't
I
have
know.
sophisticated tastes, I guess. I just threw the first partier alcohol I could come up with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But
So
yeah, the
yeah.
very more social, obviously talking a lot about writing, and with, a defined track of presentations, which will be about writing. But I'm really hoping that we can facilitate conversations that are much more personal and getting to know each other, and not just constantly talking about writing the whole time. So that's a big focus for me, is
Yeah.
like, all right, let's get to know each other. And we don't do that by only talking about cover design.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's fun. We can talk about cover design too.
You can too. Yeah, you can do that too, but you rarely bond with people over discussing cover design.
Yep.
That's my experience. Very cool. All right. Well, I mean, I think we're getting close to having to wrap up. Now I know that if people want to find you, they can visit your website at jessiekwak.com. For the listener, let me spell that out for listeners. That's JESSIEKWAK.com. You'll probably find links to it in the show notes of the episode as well. What if they want to find out more about the Author Alchemy Summit? Where can they find more of that?
Yeah, so there will be a link from jessiekwak.com as well, but it is at authoralchemysummit.com.
I should have created a banner for that. Maybe I can real quick. Nope, it's not letting me type. Okay, authoralchemy.com, correct?
authoralchemysummit.com.
Summit.com. I almost
Yeah.
did it wrong. So if you're watching this and you need a reference, It should be on your screen right now. Did I spell everything correctly?
Yeah,
I think I did.
And depending on when you're listening to this, I mean, live people obviously right now, but early bird pricing will end in the end of October. So we're still in early bird right now.
Early bird pricing. What's the what pricing can people expect?
$6.99.
$6.99. Yeah. $6.99, everybody.
Exactly.
Hurry here. $699 is not bad for. And how many days is the summit?
It'll be 2 days, 2 full days of programming. There's like
with meals,
happy hour. Yeah. Happy hour meet and greet Thursday night. And then Friday, Saturday is programming with, like I said, breakfast and lunch. And then karaoke party Saturday night. And then Sunday we'll probably have more kind of, if you're staying in town and, some events, but it won't be as formal.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's fantastic. So thank you for dropping in and helping us figure out this whole author community thing. It's something when I talk to authors, I mean, we don't always realize it. We are all part of a community as it is. But it's that human connection. We kind of sometimes forget we need humans in the business. Like, sometimes it just becomes us and Scrivener and or whatever your writing tool preference happens to be. And we forget that it's equally important. As important as putting the words down, as important as doing the marketing is bonding with other people that share this stream we have. So thank you so much for being a part of helping people learn how to do that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is really, really fun to be able to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you around again sometime. I want to hear how things go with the summit. But,
for sure.
For now, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Everybody watching this, thank you for being a part of the show. And I thank our wonderful guests for being a part of the show as well. If you are looking for a way to kind of keep up with what's going on with DDD Live or with the Self-Publishing Insiders podcast, make sure you go to dddlive.com. You can bookmark that. And you get a countdown. Every single week we have an episode. So you get a countdown to what's coming up live. Sometimes we'll have some special stuff in there like webinars. We got a webinar coming up soon. We're going to be going to NINC in a couple of weeks. So you're going to see all kinds of crazy stuff happening on the channel. So make sure you go and sign up for those alerts. Of course, if you want to get started, go to draftedigital.com to get started on your own indie author publishing career. And we're going to do one quick thing. Jessie, you hang out, but everybody else, we're going to play a little spot here, and then we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for being a part of Self-Publishing Insiders Live. Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created DDD Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftedigital.com.